challenges. You have challenges, especially in meeting your obligations, majorly the current obligations. So we say that you need to maintain a balance of current assets vis-a-vis the current liabilities. Okay, and we say that this working capital, of course, if it is high, it is dangerous because there are dangers of excessive working capital. But also, if it is too low, it is also dangerous. Okay, because that means that your operating plans will not be achieved. It may also lead to deterioration of the firm's profitability, and even the organization might lose its reputation, especially where you find that you have failed to meet your obligations. And we also say that if it is excessive, it is also dangerous because you find that you would have accumulated too much inventory than you need. And of course, you know the dangers of accumulating inventory, mishandling, waste, theft, losses, okay? And especially also when you find that your debtors are high, then it is basically an indicator of a defective credit policy. That means that your credit team maybe are not working well. And of course, you know there is a possibility that some debtors are likely to become bad. And of course, when they become bad, it will adversely affect profits. Then also it results in managerial inefficiency, okay? Especially if you find that you do not have enough working capital funds, or you find that you have a lot, management will not be bothered, okay? They won't care. And of course, that would also result into wastage. Now, what are some of the importances of working capital management? Why is it necessary to manage working capital? Okay. One, we say that it is important. You need to match your current assets with current liabilities, because if you don't do that and you find that you have a mismatch in your current assets and current liabilities, then that means that you find that the business is likely even actually to fail or collapse. Because if you begin by, in other words, you are unable to clear your bills, especially when they fall due, okay? And you find that maybe there is overstocking, okay? Or there is over trading, then it is likely to have serious or negative effects on the business operations, okay? So working capital management is a key factor to the success, long-term success of an organization, okay? And of course, the decision regarding the level of overall investment in working capital, of course, is a cost-benefit trade-off versus vis-a-vis liquidity versus profitability. Because we say that you need to balance the two. Maintain sufficient liquid resources, okay? Of course, as you undertake profitable activities, okay? And of course, And profitable companies can survive if they have liquidity. And this is very, very true. You may find that you are maybe not doing well in terms of generating sufficient profits, but you find that you have enough cash resources. So it means that you'll be able to survive. You can be able to survive. But companies which are more profitable and you find that they have run out of cash to pay their liabilities, they may not survive, especially when the suppliers are on your neck. The month has ended, you are unable to pay your employees. The bank loans are on your neck. So meaning that you will not be able to survive, however much the activities that you undertake are profitable, but if you do not have sufficient resources to meet your current obligations, okay, of course it will have an effect on the way you operate. So the main sources of liquidity are usually the cash that you have in the bank, okay, the short-term investments that you can easily cash in, okay, quickly. In other words, that you can quickly convert into cash. And of course, I told you that you may find that the organization may have sufficient current assets, but you find that most of those current assets are not liquid, okay? Because the order of liquidity matters a lot, because you may find that you have more stock. And if you have more stock, what does it imply? That you have to first sell that stock. And of course, you may find that you've sold on credit, okay? And then you have to wait. There's that time that you take to receive money from your debtors, okay? The waiting time. So meaning that you need to also consider how liquid are the current assets, because some current assets are less liquid. Okay, but if you find that the organization has got sufficient cash balances, maybe you have enough money in the bank, or you have got some short-term investments, like you invested in treasury bills, because you know that anytime you can sell them off, even before their date of maturity, much as you may incur some losses. Okay, maybe you have got fixed deposit, fix some cash, okay, and maybe cash inflows from the normal trading operations, those, in other words, the cash sales and payments by receivables for credit sales, or what you call debtors, okay. So all these are main sources of liquidity, and maybe also an overdraft facility or other ready source of extra borrowing, okay. So I say the cash balances and cash flows, you need to monitor them regularly, okay, like the way you normally monitor your profits, okay, because you need to ensure that you have sufficient cash resources, because if you run out of cash, it's going to be a challenge, okay. Even, by the way, we as individuals, because you find that if you get all your money and you invest it in long-term assets, and moreover, those assets that may not be that are idle, they're just there, they're not generating any income, okay, then you are going to have challenges. Actually, that's why you find that in most cases, you find somebody has retired. I don't know if we have a retiree online. Is there anybody who has retired, or you are still in a, you're still all working? You have a retiree here. So I was trying to say, you may find that somebody has got the assets. You have all the assets. You have big chunks and chunks of land, but you are struggling, especially after retirement. Why? Because you do not have enough cash to meet your day-to-day obligations. Yes, you have the assets, but maybe those assets are idle. They're not generating anything. And eventually, there is no that regular income, maybe the salary that you are getting. And you find that you are having financial challenges. You are having financial challenges because all your monies were invested in long-term assets. And you find that those assets that you have are non-productive. So you're just there. You do not have sufficient income to meet your monthly bills. You can't pay for your power, you can't pay for your medical care. So this is something that we need to look at, in that as we plan, okay, then we should be looking at those investments, maybe that are short term, that will be able to generate a quick cash, okay, which may enable you meet your obligations. Actually, I always say that if you retire and then you find that you're using your retirement package to construct like a house, then that is a wrong decision. You have clocked 60, they have given you a package, and then you're thinking of using that package to construct a house, moreover, a residential house. That is a poor decision, because that house that you are constructing will not generate any income. So what will happen? It means that you will struggle financially, because even you may find that the package that you've got, the result, it is not sufficient even to complete the house. So once you start, you reach at the roofing stage, and the money is done. You are stuck. Or you find that they have given you your package, and then you say, let me go and now begin put up rentals. Because at least for you to put like 3 units, maybe of 2 bedrooms that are well furnished, you need around 250 million. Okay. Maybe your retirement package is 150,000. Or rather 150 million. So if they give you 150 million, you find that that money is not even sufficient to complete the rental units that you are going to start. And then you find that the project has reached halfway and you are stuck. And then you go now to borrow. So what does it imply? That you will have challenges, because you'll not be able to pay the bank loan. Moreover, your project is halfway. It is not generating any income. Okay. So that is what I'm trying to say here. That as you plan, you need to ensure that at least I will have sufficient cash I will have sufficient cash to meet my obligations. Because in the end, you will have challenges. You find that even if you have the assets, you are struggling because those assets are idle. And by the way, selling an asset, especially if it is like land, selling it, getting a buyer, it may not be as easy as you think. You may put maybe the land on sale, and it can even take a good time before you get a buyer. In other words, if you think of liquidating some of the assets. Okay. Now, this brings us to the concept of overcapitalization and overtrading. So if there are excessive inventories or accounts receivable, or in other words, you have excessive debtors, okay, and there is excessive cash and very few accounts payable, then we can say there is overinvestment by the company in current assets. So in this case, the working capital will be excessive and the company will be overcapitalized. And of course, it is also not good to be overcapitalized. Then for overtrading, when we talk of overtrading, of course, cash flow is the lifeblood of any thriving business. Okay. So meaning that if the organization is able to control the business cash flow, then to be able to survive. Okay. So meaning that in this case, management must have full awareness of the profitability versus liquidity trade-off. And healthy trading growth normally produces increased profitability and the need to increase investment in non-current assets and working capital. Okay. So in contrast to overcapitalization, if the business does not have sufficient capital to fund the increase, then it is said to be over trading. In other words, you do not have sufficient resources to fund the increase in your activities or increase in your operations, then we can say you're over trading. And of course, this can cause trouble, serious trouble for the business, because in the end, you'll find that you are unable to pay your creditors. Now, cash operating cycle. Now, when you talk of a cash operating cycle, we are looking at that time lag, the time that it takes you to acquire the raw materials, okay, pay wages and other expenses, and then the inflow of cash from sale of goods. Okay, so if a firm can push items very fast around the cycle, then the lower its investment in working capital will be. Now, when you check this diagram, you realize that the farm will acquire the raw materials, and these raw materials will go through the conversion process. And of course, that is where you have items that may not be complete. And then eventually you will have the finished goods that you may sell. And of course, once you sell, in most cases, you find that you may not sell on cash basis, but you sold maybe on credit. Okay, because you see, when you're operating in a competitive environment, you cannot only sell on cash, because you must extend credit to your customers, because credit could be used as a marketing tool. So once you sell, then you are receiving you are receiving money from your debtors, and eventually, once you get the cash, you pay your suppliers. This is how it should be. But if you find that when you acquire the raw materials, you find that, in other words, you made the items, they have been processed, complete, you've sold them, and you have sold, but you have not received the money. But then you find that you have paid your suppliers before you receive the money, okay, from your debtors. Then that is also not healthy, because it means that you are using funds from other sources, ideally to finance your payables. And that is not good financial management, because that means either you have borrowed or you are using your personal funds to pay your suppliers instead of getting money from your debtors, and then you clear your payables. So this is something that you need to always look at and ensure that the cycle is in other words, you have to make it as short as possible. Because if it is long, then it implies that it is going to have negative consequences on your operations. You acquire the raw materials, you put them in the stores, and the production is not taking place. What does it imply? That you will take long to sell, because you cannot sell what you've not completed. And eventually you find that you may not have sufficient cash to pay your suppliers. And if you take long to pay your suppliers, you know the consequences. Either you damage your reputation, they will not be able to supply you at some future for future supplies. Or you may find that if they are to supply, they will quote high prices because they know maybe your company or organization takes long to pay. So meaning that if somebody is giving a quotation, then it's going to factor in the time that of course you will take to do what? To clear. Okay. Now, how do we compute the cash operating cycle for a manufacturing business and also a wholesale or retail business? Now, the cash operating cycle for the manufacturing business is got by looking at the raw materials holding period. Okay, if you get the raw materials, how long do you take to convert them into finished products? Then you list the payables or creditors payment period, add work in progress period, okay? Those same complete products, how long do you take for you to complete them? Then you add the finished goods holding period, okay? Finished goods holding period if you've completed your items. So how long do you take to sell them? Or how long do they stay in the warehouse? Then you also add the receivables collection period. And then you will have the cash operating cycle. Okay. Then for a wholesale or retail business, because wholesale or retail businesses, they do not have raw materials or work in progress holding periods, then the cycle now changes. Inventory holding period, add the less payables payment period, and then you add the receivables or debtors collection period. And the cycle, the cash operating cycle, may be measured in days, may be measured in weeks or months. Okay, so it could be days, it could be weeks, or it could be months. So a manufacturing company, there is an example here that a manufacturing company generally pays its suppliers 6 weeks after receiving an invoice. Okay, 6 weeks after receiving an invoice. While receivables usually pay within 4 weeks of invoicing. Okay, raw materials inventory is held for a week before processing begins, and processing itself takes 3 weeks. Finished goods stay in the inventory for an average of 2 weeks. So how long is the company's cash operating cycle? So meaning that if you get this is a manufacturing company, so meaning that our cash operating cycle shall look at the raw materials holding period, and they are saying that the raw materials are held for an average of how many weeks? How many weeks? So they are held for a week. This is what they're saying here. Okay. So that means if I bring this here, just if I put it in this, so the raw materials are held for 1 week. 1 week. Then the payables, and you pay your suppliers. Because here they are saying that suppliers are paid 6 weeks. So I erase 6. Six weeks. Then the work in progress. So what is the work in progress? Processing itself takes 3 weeks. So that is work in progress. So I erase 3. I add 3. Then finished goods are held for an average of how many weeks? An average of 2. Then you receive money from your debtors. After receiving, why receivable usually pay within 4 weeks? So here it is
4 weeks.
Okay, so meaning that the cash operating cycle will be how many weeks? 4 weeks, and that is not bad. Okay, because 4 weeks, that is a month. What does it imply? That you are able to acquire the raw materials, convert them into finished goods, sell those finished goods, and then you receive your money from debtors, and basically you pay your suppliers. Okay, so it is not bad. It isn't bad, because when you even look at the receivables correction period, you take 4 weeks to correct your money, but then you take 6 weeks to pay your suppliers, which is ideally not a bad position. Now, there is example 2, where they say a manufacturing company has provided the following information. The receivables collection period is 56, raw material inventory holding period is 21, production period for work in progress is 14 days, supply payment period is 42, finished goods holding period 28. So saying that you calculate the length of the operating cycle. And of course, here now it is days, because we say that the cycle, you can look at it in terms of weeks, or you can look at it in terms of days or months, depending. Now, use of cash operating cycle. So the cash operating cycle is basically a critical measure of the overall cash requirements for working capital management. And the amount of cash that is normally required for the operating cycle will increase either if the cycle gets longer, or the level of activity or sales when they increase. So monitoring the operating cycle, the manager gains a macro view of the relative efficiency of the working capital utilization. Okay. And it may also be a key target to reduce the operating cycle in order to improve efficiency. Now, what are some of the factors that affect the length of the operating cycle? The first one is liquidity versus profitability. Okay, and of course, with this, you are looking at maintaining sufficient cash resources, and profitability, you are looking at undertaking those investment opportunities that are more profitable. So there must be a trade-off between the two. Then the efficiency of management, okay, is also very key, because if management is very inefficient, okay, then you may find that either the operating cycle will be long, okay. Industry norms, because of course, also what you need to know is that the different businesses have got different working capital needs. Okay. For example, if you are looking at a supermarket business, and maybe construction, okay, you're looking at the supermarket, the working capital needs for a supermarket may not be the same as that of maybe a hardware shop. Which one do you think requires more working capital? When you compare the hardware and the supermarket?
I think the supermarket needs more working capital. Because it has products that easily moved and is perishable, and you need quick replacement. And
yes, they need quick replacement.
Yeah,
you find that the working capital needs for the supermarket, because without working capital you cannot operate, because most of the items are daily what items. So if you do not have them, then that means that your operations greatly affected. Okay. So the length of the operating cycle is also determined by the industry. In other words, the industry in which the organization operates. Some organizations, of course, have got a longer operating cycle, whereas others have got a short operating cycle. Okay. Now we have got different working capital ratios, and of course, these ratios help us determine the operating cycle. And of course, one of them is the inventory holding period. And of course, this ratio computes the length of time the length of time inventory is held between purchase and sale. Okay. And for you to get the inventory holding period, you need to get the inventory divided by cost of sales times 365. That is if the cycle is measured in days. Okay. And you're saying here that in some cases, a more detailed breakdown of inventory may be required. So meaning that inventory holding period can be calculated for each type of inventory. In other words, if you may have raw material inventory, work in progress, or finished goods inventory, because it may be of 3 types. Then you have raw material inventory holding period. And of course, you are looking at the time raw materials are held between purchase and being used in production. And it is computed as raw material inventory divided by material usage times 365. Okay. Then for the work in progress holding period, that is the time the goods spent in production. And it is computed as work in progress inventory held divided by production cost times 365. Then you have finished goods inventory holding period. And of course, that is the length of time the finished goods are held between completion or purchase and sale. And how is it computed? It's computed as finished goods inventory held divided by cost of goods sold times 365. Now, for all inventory period ratios, a raw ratio is usually seen as a sign of good working capital management, because in most cases, it is very expensive to hold inventory. So meaning that an organization that maintains a minimum level of inventory, okay, is really a good practice. But of course, bearing in mind that you forecast what you need at all times so that you do not run out of stock. Trade receivables, trade receivable days, okay, length of time credit is extended to customers, computed as trade receivable over credit sales times 365. And the shorter the credit period, okay, the better for the organization. But also, if we may not conclusively say that it would be also better for the organization, because you may find that the organization is having a shorter credit period, maybe because it has got a strict credit policy, okay? And if you have a strict credit policy, that means that maybe it may even scare away your potential customers. Because if a customer knows that the other side, they are very strict, without cash, no service, then people may move to other suppliers. Okay, so we need to bear that in mind as we are setting the credit policy, policies. We must ensure that at least they are not so strict, but at the same time, they are not too lenient. Because if you are too lenient, then it is also dangerous for the organization. So that means even debtors will take advantage. Anyway, they will say, anyway, the other one, they don't mind, even if you take some time. Okay, so it must be balanced, not too strict, not too lenient. Then trade payables. And of course, this is the average period of credit extended by suppliers. And how is it computed? Trade payables divided by credit purchases times 365. That is if you want it in days. Generally, if you have increasing payable days, it implies that you are taking advantage of that free credit. Because if somebody has supplied you goods on credit, that is free, so one free source of finance, interest free, which you've taken advantage of. Okay, but of course, as you take that free credit, you must ensure that you do not go beyond maybe the allowed credit period. Why? If you go beyond, then that means you might lose your supplier goodwill. Where the supplier gives discounts, you may even lose them, especially for prompt payment. Okay. Then suppliers also increasing the price. This is what I had mentioned earlier. Suppliers may increase the price in order to compensate for that time that you take with their money, especially if they get to know that you are slow at paying. Okay. Then we also have working capital liquidity ratios, so that those ratios that enable us assess the short-term liquidity, okay, of the organization. And these ratios, we have the current ratio, and this measures how much the total current assets are financed by current liabilities. And the current ratio is got by current assets over current liabilities. And of course, a measure of 2-to-1 means that current liabilities can be paid twice over out of existing current assets. So when I say 2-to-1, that is the idea. That for every 1 shilling of current liabilities, you have got at least 2 current assets. Okay. So if my current liability, the obligation that I have is 1, at least I have got 2 current assets to cover. So that is the ideal current ratio. And the higher the ratio, the better. But of course, we don't need to blindly follow this. Okay? You may find that the company or organization may have current ratio of maybe 10-to-1. Okay? So we don't need to blindly follow this by saying that because it is very high, you have 1 current liability, and then you also have 10 current assets. And then we say that the company has the ability to meet its current obligations. It might be like that, but then you find that the company is struggling. And that's why I say that you need to go and look at the components of the current assets. What are your current assets? Because you may find that, yes, it is 10-to-1, but much of the funds are tied up in debtors. And when you go to the bank, when you look at the liquid cash, there is little to cover really the obligations. The cash reserves are insufficient, but the company, yes, it has got a high current ratio, but most of the current assets are in the form of stock. In other words, you've tied up all your monies in stock or inventory, and also debtors. Okay, so that is what we need to bear in mind. Then the quick ratio or asset-based ratio. This, of course, measures how well current liabilities are covered by liquid assets. And this ratio is particularly useful where the inventory holding periods are very long. And for us to get the quick ratio or asset-based ratio, it is got by current assets minus inventory divided by current liabilities. Okay? Because we say that current assets may not be liquid. That's why we need to go ahead and remove inventory so that we can basically assess whether the company will be able to meet its current liabilities, especially once we exclude the less liquid current assets. Because with inventory, you are still very far. You have to sell it. Then after selling it, then you expect to get money from your debtors. But at least if they are debtors, you are sure that anytime the person will pay you. But if it is still in inventory, still holding inventory, then you are still very far from realizing the cash. So that implies that you have to first market, sell, make sales. Then, of course, most of your customers would want to take advantage of credit. And then you find that you also have that time period to collect that money from your debtors. The measure of 1:1, of course, is the ideal or the quick ratio. That means that the company is able to meet its existing liabilities if they fall due at once. Okay? Then we also have working capital turnover. Okay? And of course, working capital turnover ratio is computed as sales revenue divided by net working capital. And this working capital turnover investment in working capital generates sales and is in most cases useful when assessing where the company is overspending. And this ratio must be interpreted in light of other ratios are used. Now there is an example here. XPLC has the following figures from its most recent accounts. Receivables, trade payables, average raw materials inventory holding period, average work in progress inventory holding period, average finished goods sales, and they're saying 80% on credit. So what does it imply? That when we are computing our trade receivable days, then we shall only consider the credit sales. Then you have material usage, material purchases, and they're saying that all on credit. You have the production cost, you have the cost of sales. So they're saying that you compute the different working capital ratios, and then you calculate the cash operating cycle. So I want to give you like 20 minutes. You do this for me, then I will require you to share it. I want you to do for me this example. I believe you all have it. I want you to determine for me the cash operating cycle. And the formulas, of course, are there. You first need to compute these ratios. And then you compute the cycle. So how many minutes? Are you online?
Yes, sir.
So I'm giving you, I think in 10 minutes you should be done. So I'm giving you 10 minutes. You compute for me the cash operating cycle for this farm, XPLC. I believe you have the question. So I would want at least each one of you to share what you have done. So please make sure that you participate, do not sit. So I'm giving now 10 minutes, 8 minutes are remaining.